everybody, it's Lisa with Quilting in the Valley. So here we are. Today we're going to talk about TNT, thread, needle, tension. This is the same for any machine. It does not matter which machine you have, whether you have one of these Berninas or not, you still need to pay attention to your thread, your needle, and your tension. Your machine has zero idea what kind of thread that you're using in it, nor does it care. So any machine on the market will work well with any thread on the market. You've got to use the right needle, thread, tension combination in order to make that work. So there are different types of needles. The first thing I'm going to say is needles are disposable. They are meant to be disposable. As you use this, think about how many hundreds and thousands of times that this pierces the fabric. It dulls over time. So at some point in time, this needle is going to be dull, 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 and you got to replace it. Typically, that's about every 8 hours of sewing. You should replace this needle. It will perform better when it's got the sharpness it's supposed to have. When it's worn down to a nub, you can kind of start to hear it. It kind of thump, 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 thump. It's not your machine, it's your needle making that noise. So replace your needles. We pay a lot of money for these sewing machines. To not replace a $1 needle in them is silly. Think about saying, I'm not going to change the oil in my car because I should only have to have one oil change. No, change your needles. Okay, that said, you also have to make sure you have the right type of needle for the thread that you're using. It does make a difference. As a matter of fact, it makes all the difference. If you have the wrong type of a needle or the wrong size of a needle for the thread or the technique that you're doing, you're going to have disastrous results. You're going to have loops, you're going to have thread breaking, you're going to have all kinds of stuff. And it's not your machine, it's your thread and your needle. So let's talk about what a needle is. So here is a very large needle. We hurt somebody with this. So on this needle, you've got the flat side of the back. The vast majority of machines on the market use this. There are some singers that use a round needle, but we're not talking about those. We're talking about the vast majority of machines on the market. You're going to use a flat back needle. There's multiple different brands of needles on the market. You've got Organ needles, you've got your Bernina branded needles, you've got your Schmetz branded needles, you've got your Gross Beckert branded needles. There really isn't, in a quilt shop, you're not going to find a low quality needle. So they're pretty much all going to behave the same in your fabric, and they're all built the same way. So you've got the flat part on the back. That goes to the rear of your machine when you put the needle in. It always goes to the back. You've got the point of the needle. The point of the needle is going to be sharper, rounded, semi-rounded, or micro-pointed, depending on what type of needle you've got. You've got the eye of the needle. That's the hole right there. The eye of the needle is going to have a different shape to it based on what that needle is designed to do. For example, if you're using a straight stitch needle, it's going to have a hole that is more narrow, elongated, and meant to go straight forward and straight back. If you're doing, say, quilting or embroidery, you're going to use a needle that has a more rounded, oval shaped hole, and that's to allow your thread to navigate from side to side as well as from front to back. So the eye of the needle makes a big difference, the shape of it, in whether or not you have thread breakage. If you're free motion quilting with a straight stitch needle, I can guarantee you're going to have thread breakage, a lot of it. You're not going to have a good time doing that. Okay, this is the shaft of the needle, this whole part here, and there's a groove in it right here. This groove is designed for the thread to sit in. If your thread is properly sized to your needle, that groove will be the right size for the thread to fit all the way inside this so that it eliminates some stress on the thread as it goes in and out of the fabric. So this will protect your thread from fraying, basically. If you're using a needle that is too small for the thread that you're using, your thread will not go in that groove. It will be frayed. You will have thread breakage. If you're using a needle that the groove is too big for the thread that you're using, it'll rebound around in there and not stay where it's supposed to be because it won't snug in there. And then you're going to, again, get fraying and thread breakage. Let's talk about thread. You've got 40 weight thread. So this is Aurifil 40 weight thread. This is 100% cotton. This is Isacord 40 weight thread. This is 100% polyester. And this is 50 weight thread. This is Aurifil 50 weight thread. 100% cotton. I see a lot of posts out there in Facebook land and other places where people are saying, you know, Ortho thread is terrible, terrible, terrible because it has so much lint. No. No, 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 no. Okay, if you're piecing or quilting with cotton fabrics, guess what? You have lint off the cotton. Come work in a quilt shop for a while. We have this gray graveyard dust all over the place where we cut fabric and this dust, fuzz, comes off of that fabric. If you're top stitching or quilting and you've got batting in there, you're getting a ton of lint off of the batting. So do an exercise. Run some just fabric and batting underneath your needle for a while with no thread. Check to see how much lint you have. Bet you money you'll have a bunch of lint. You haven't used thread. What is a good way to tell if you have a linty thread? Hold it out. Hold it out and look. So I'm holding this 40 weight thread out and I'm not seeing any little hairs off of it. I mean, you're going to see a little bit because it's cotton, so it's made out of fibers. You're going to see some. But I'm not seeing a ton of them off of this. Run your hand down it. Does it all feel the same width? Or are you feeling some variations, feeling some lumps? That'll tell you something. If you're using a poor quality thread and you hold this up, you will see, visibly see, all kinds of lumps in that thread from here to there. And that causes problems. That causes excess lint, and it also causes fraying and breakage as it goes through the needle because those lumps get caught up in your needle. This is the 50 weight thread. Do the same thing. Pull it up. Look for the lint. The other thing you can do is if you've got a bobbin winder on the top of your machine, like most of the Berninas do, wind a black bobbin with a poor quality thread and look and see how much black fuzz is on the top of your white machine. Clean it off, choose another thread, wind another black bobbin. And at some point in time, you're gonna see which one throws the least lint. That's a really good way to check for lint. You will see, even on polyester threads, you are gonna see some shedding. So you will see a little bit of lint. I know we used a Mettler brand poly, and we were running black bobbins, and it threw a lot of lint off. It's a little different. The consistency of the lint is a little different, but it's lint nonetheless. So there you go. Use a good thread. If your thread's older than 10 years, it's too old. If it's a cotton thread and it's older than 10 years, it's too old. Dry rot sets in and it makes the thread weak in certain locations. You'll have excess thread breakage. If you got a wooden spool, you got a box full of wooden spooled cotton thread that you inherited from your grandmother, it's cute for a decoration. Don't use it in your sewing machine. You will just cause yourself nothing but heartburn. Okay. If you are using a 50 weight thread like this one, you're going to make sure that you are going to use let's see if I have one. Oh, here's one. A 75 or an 80 needle. Now on your needles, you're going to have two different identification numbers. So this one says 8012. A 75 would be a 7511. A 90 is a 9014. And there is an 85. You know, it's not very common, but there is an 85. An 80 is a good general all-purpose one. It'll work with 50 weight. And if you're not going at tremendously high speeds, it'll also work with a 40 weight. So 80 and 12, what does that mean? The 80 is European sizing, so it's metric. The 12 is imperial sizing, so it's British American. I don't know, I think Australia might do that too, I'm not sure. Anyway, so you got European sizing, you got imperial sizing. Means the exact same thing. So 80 and 12 means the exact same thing. What I'm holding is a Microtex needle. A Microtex needle is exceptional for piecing with cotton fabrics. It has a really, really sharp point, a really, really elongated, sharp point. And it's meant to pierce the fabric and not create big holes. It's not going to leave big holes behind, which is really good. A Microtex needle is meant for sewing forward and back. It is not meant for free motion quilting. So the eye, this part of a Microtex needle, is going to be the elongated slit, meant to go back and forward. If you try using it for free motion quilting or for top stitch, like in free motion embroidering or for embroidering, you're probably going to have thread breakage because it's not going to be happy. So this is quilting needles. Quilting, and this is a 90-14. So the quilting needle in a 90-14 is best for your 40 weight fabric or thread. It's way too big for a 50 weight thread. A 50 weight thread will break if you're using it in a 90-14 needle because this needle is too big and the thread's not seating where it needs to, so it's wandering around in there and it's getting excess fraying. So if you're using a 90-14, make sure you're using 40 weight thread. A quilting needle, again, has that slightly rounded oval shaped hole and that's meant to go multi-directional. You'll have fewer thread breaks if you're using 40 weight thread in a 90-14 needle for quilting in a quilting needle. These are universal needles. Universal needles have a slightly rounded point. So they're kind of sharp, but kind of rounded. So they're good for cottons. They're good for some knits. They're kind of an all-purpose kind of a thing. If you're doing piecing, they will leave larger holes in your fabric than you want. So we really suggest that you look into the Microtex needles for piecing with cotton. What else do I want to tell you? Looping. When you get looping on the bottom, it is due to your top thread. Okay, looping underneath and big bird's nests underneath is typically your top thread, not your bottom thread. So anytime that happens, you are going to check, do I have the right needle in? Did I thread my needle with the foot up? So every sewing machine out there, the tension discs in your take-up lever are closed when the foot is down. If you're threading with your foot down, then you're laying your thread on top of your closed tension discs and it's not fully seated. When you're threading with your foot up, your tension discs are open, your thread seats between them, and then when you lower your foot, it clamps on the thread, and then you get good tension. So, do you adjust your tension the very first minute you see some loops on the bottom? Absolutely not. Nope, 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 nope. You're gonna check your threading. So cut at the top, pull it through, rethread. Check again. Check that you have the right needle in. Check that you have the right needle for your thread and that it's still got a nice sharp point. If your needle does not have a nice sharp point, you'll get looping, believe it or not. What else do I want to tell you? Clean, 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 clean. Get yourself some cleaning brushes and clean. So we use this is the Tooltron brush. It's a natural fiber, which the stuff sticks to. They're kind of, I don't know, it's got split ends, I guess is the best way to say that. So it grabs and holds on to fuzz that you're pulling out of the machine. So this is a really good machine brush for cleaning. You'll get in there and pull stuff out as opposed to blowing it in. By the way, don't ever use canned air. Don't blow things into your machine. Canned air, the propellant is liquid. So you're blowing liquid into the metal working parts of your machine, which then eventually turns into rust. So don't do that. Suck it out, don't blow it in. Use a microvac attachment if you need to pull things out, or get a nice brush like this and clean frequently. If you're all packed with felt down in the bottom, this needle's gonna have a hard time making a stitch because it's hitting felt in the bottom. These little brushes are kind of neat. These little brushes, these are from Eleanor Burns, Quilt in a Day. You can bend these and they have almost like a bristly end on them that'll grab little bits of goobers and they'll get in places that you can't get into with a brush like this. So we keep these as well to really do fine cleaning and get back inside behind your bobbin case and all that. So keep it clean, that'll make it stitch better. If you need to oil your machine, there are a lot of machines that are closed systems that you don't ever oil. They're using silicone and plastic parts and stuff, which just, you know, it doesn't dissipate, it's always in there. And then there's a lot of machines like Bernina's, some of the older workhorse machines, your Kenmores, your Singers, your Whites, a lot of the old workhorse machines that just don't die. Metal working parts, metal bobbin cases, metal on metal, you want to oil those machines fairly regularly. All the Bernina's, Metal bobbin cases, metal working parts, you gotta oil them. They're much happier and they will stitch much better, and you will have fewer thread breaks and fewer issues with your needles when your machine is well oiled. So I hope that I got everything. I hope I covered everything for you. Make sure you've got the right size needle. Make sure your needle matches your thread. Make sure your needle is the right type of needle for the technique that you're doing. So if you're doing free motion quilting, use a quilting needle. If you're using doing embroidery, use an embroidery needle. And if you're using a larger thread, use a larger needle. If you're using a finer thread, use a finer needle. That'll make all the difference no matter what sewing machine you've got. That makes all the difference in your end result, and your machine will be much, much happier with you no matter what kind of thread you use. You can use any thread on the market. So long as you keep your machine clean, use the right needle, you can use any thread on the market. Your machine won't know the difference. That's all we got for today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.